Listeners, you're joining us here on the Future Show on Inspire FM. I look at all things careers and education in the town. I'm your host, Amar Azam of Unleashing Potential. In this latest installment of the show, we've been reflecting on the past year, certainly a year to remember for us all. In a few moments, you'll hear from Jawairiya Tanveer, my co-presenter, who spoke recently to 3 school leaders about their past 12 months. She was joined by Nick Ponsonby, assistant head teacher at Chorley High School for Girls. Also joining her was Samir Mohammed, head of Key Stage 3 at Chorley High School for Boys, as well as Carl Bell, assistant head teacher at Chilton Academy. And after the break, we hear from 3 senior leaders from local schools. We are lucky to be joined by Mumin Hamayan, head of school at Stockwood Park Academy. Also joining us will be Rhoda Flindle, head teacher at Ashcroft High School, and a head teacher of one of our local primary schools, Catherine Lovell of Dallow Primary.
Carl, I will come to you first. It's been quite a year for so many of us. How would you describe this past year for yourself and everyone at Chilton Academy?
I would start off by there's lots and lots of positives. It's just around it's the closeness and the connection between the schools and the local community. Because at the start of the crisis, teachers' priorities focused on people and family well-being, with many teachers sort of undertaking tasks not conventionally associated with teaching, where they might be checking on how families were coping in terms of basic food, health, emotional needs, and providing just general support where needed. And even I go so far as to say myself and the other senior members in my school and the head teacher were talking to parents about welfare and delivering hard copies of learning resources, checking student welfare on the doorsteps of families, running food vouchers, and all kind of things that are what we wouldn't consider do in our normal day-to-day job. So the first real positive thing that I could say around the kind of COVID situation is definitely been around the connection between schools and the local community.
Brilliant. Sounds like there's been a lot of involvement between Chilton Academy and the local community and its students, which sounds really, really great. And like you said, a lot more work than usual. Nick, coming to you next, we are leading up to it being an official year since the first lockdown was announced by the Prime Minister, and I'm sure it's been quite bittersweet for a lot of us. But I guess this year has just really highlighted the immense resilience shown by students, the dedication teachers have to their profession, and just the ability to rapidly adapt. So, Nick, what's been the highlight for you this past year?
I think there's lots to highlight. I think, to echo what Carl said, it's been a hugely challenging year for everybody, but I think the most important thing is we've all come out of it. We've all learnt loads, and I think highlight-wise from a teaching point of view, I think we've learned that our adaptability is absolutely something else. So I think we've learned to be with, remote learning. We've dealt with students in provision. We've all adapted and developed our skills. So, for example, new skills in technology. And I think what's really stuck for me is that how much the teaching community have knitted together and the fact that they've come together and they've really supported each other. Like, even from my own point of view, I had people from school emailing me checking that I was okay. So to sort of echo again what Carl said around this idea of well-being and things, it extended to staff and students as well. And I think for me, the highlight of the year is just actually understanding and seeing how fantastic and resilient our young people are in this town and everywhere across the country. Now, there's been lots of sort of poems and quotes about our young people, and I think I would sort of sum them up by saying they really are our superheroes because they've lost their rite of passage for things. We had year 6 coming into our secondary schools this year. They had no transition process. They lost their rite of passage to all the things they should do. We had our year 11s that just left at kind of, a day's notice. You're finishing high school. And actually the resilience of the young people, they absolutely need to be commended for because they've just got on and done. They've come back into school on 2 different occasions, especially last week. And to be honest, you would kind of not really realise that they've not been there because their resilience has carried them through so well. And I think they deserve all the credit in the world for that. And I think it's astounding. And I think they could actually put some adults to shame with their resilience.
Brilliant. I really love how positively you spoke about the students there. And you said something. You said the students' resilience really needs to be commended. And that brings me on to Samaya. Samaya, you have started a project which is a brilliant way of celebrating student work and a very exciting project that's really showcased the positive contributions by students. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that project, Sumaya?
Hi, Jawairiya. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's an absolute pleasure.
First and foremost, I think the title of this future show is quite fitting, COVID 1 year on. So if I just take you back to 2020, when we went through the first lockdown, around this time last year actually, I was sat in my bedroom thinking of how the world had changed so dramatically, how the things that we were in control of are not so important, actually. I think it was a time for reflection, a time that we could look at the perspective of how we handle day-to-day life situations. And so I thought of an opportunity for our students, really, and I think Nick touched on this quite well in terms of the resilience that they faced and are showing constantly day to day. And I thought, why don't we try and create history? Why don't we try and focus on the positive sides of COVID and the pandemic? So I proposed a anthology competition to the trust, and I actually contacted Adrian and I said, what do you think about this idea? I think that we could keep our students busy and give them a project to work on that they are definitely going to be able to engage with. So I sent the project out to the leaders and I said, right, the students need to write a poem, a letter, or create a piece of a story drawing on the positive experience of the pandemic. I think the school leaders, teachers, parents, all the key workers did a very good job of trying to ensure that we kept our learners busy.
So you'll all be pleased to know we've received the first draft of the publication of the anthology. We're just in the process of making some amendments and then we're going to send it off and hopefully we should receive the final copy soon. So how did this all begin? Well, the idea behind the project was to create an anthology which was representative of a truly unique period of the school's history. I mean, as you all know, the schools within the trust were closed to most students as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic that gripped the world. Most of the students and staff were required to work from home during this period. So we invited our school communities to capture the unprecedented hiatus in normality through their writing in any form they wish. So that could have been through a piece of writing, a letter, a thank you letter, a poem or a short story. You'd be pleased to hear that we had well over 500 contributions, reflecting quite a surreal moment in time. And they conveyed a strange juxtaposition of anxiety and optimistic positivity, of vulnerability and resilience. So I want to personally thank everyone who supported with the creation of this remarkable anthology. And I want to say a massive well done to all of the students that contributed within the trust. We honestly cannot wait for you all to have a look at what we have put together for you and our future authors. It's just a brilliant piece of book to look at in time, to reflect on and to read entries from perspectives of our learners. And I think it will be such a great way to share the experience as well. So I think that will be an interesting read. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sumaya. It's really heartening to hear you speak so passionately about the project that I'm sure you've spent so much time and hard work preparing for. And it really is a brilliant project to just showcase positive contributions made by students and for them to tell us in their own words, I think. So congratulations, Sumaya, and everyone involved in just bringing that project to a reality. Carl, I'll come back to you. We've just heard Sumaya speak very passionately about the young people and how they've just really demonstrated or viewed more of a positive outlook on this past year. And they've had to process many changes this past year as well. But like Sumaya said, it was a great opportunity for them to become more independent learners or, you know, take up activities or new skills that they probably wouldn't have done otherwise. So Carl, tell us about the students and Shilton Academy and how they've used this past year to remain engaged with their learning, be supportive of their peers, or maybe try out something new.
One of the things that I'm really proud of in my school and within the trust and within the town is how schools have got together and helped sort of diminish the digital divide. Because if you look at sort of statistics out there, there are obviously 7.5 billion people on the planet, and only 4.1 billion people have internet connection. And that obviously doesn't include access to computers, software packages. And, you know, there is this huge amount of work to go with once these people get the software and the internet packages, that they know how to use technology efficiently. So one of the things that I'm really proud of in our school is, you know, ensuring that the children have internet access and that they've got a device that they can use at home remotely. And, you know, I've just met with my pupil council actually, and we spoke about how lockdown has affected the student body. And one of the things that supported children who didn't have a device or a computer and got that to them quickly so that they could continue their remote learning outside of the classroom and outside at home, which I think is really, really important. And those schools who have got high engagement are those who have got a device for those children really, really quickly and internet access, but have also trained them on how to use that device, which is really, really important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Carl, for sharing that experience with us. Nick, I'll come back to you next. As you know, during my first placement, I was at Shawnee Girls, and I was able to observe a lot of good practice that was being shared, and in particular, some quite creative ways of tackling remote learning. And I guess a remote platform was a good opportunity to explore different strategies, and you have touched upon this earlier on a little bit. So Nick, tell us about some of the new and creative teaching and learning strategies that yourself or your colleagues have used at Shawnee Girls.
Obviously, we're an EdTech school along with Denby High School. And I think one of the biggest things that came through from the whole remote learning was the fact that people were going off, people were learning different things, and then they were coming back and sharing them with their colleagues, sharing them with the sort of the whole school environment, if you like, through HIT sessions and things. And I think really some of the sort of the most creative things that have come out is, you know, the use of modes for feedback to students. So feedback for students was of utmost importance to all of us at Shawnee, and I'm sure it was for all the schools in the town as well. But what we wanted to do is we were very conscious of staff and students spending a lot of time on the screens. So we were trying to sort of balance the well-being for everybody as much as we could. So I think the use of Mote was definitely one that absolutely reduced workload and sort of gave people a bit of a balance, which if you're not familiar with Mote, obviously it's a Google add-on, and it enables you to give voice recorded feedback to students. The students have absolutely loved it. I've had reports come through from all the motes I've done, and every single student had opened and listened to those motes. So I think that's one of the most creative things. I think things like, again, talking about feedback and marking, we've developed our use of rubrics on Google Classroom. I think the students have become immensely familiar with Google Classroom. I think they could probably teach us a thing or two. But I think really this idea of reducing workload, people sharing things, you know, for example, in science, we all sort of divvied out who was doing what year groups, and we were all starting to experiment and play and learn new skills with technology. And we were able to come back together as a team, share those ideas, and then it sort of fed into and drip fed into the other department and colleagues in the school as well. So I think the technology for learning for me would be the biggest sort of creative thing that as a school we have done, because I'm not saying we were you know, negative or bad about it before, but I think we've immensely developed that over this past year. And I think what's really interesting is so have the students. So for example, today I was doing something with my science group in year 8, and they said to me, "Oh, Miss, you want to be trying out this Canva?" Well, I hadn't a clue what Canva was, but I've gone and had a look, and actually it's a really lovely jazzy version of PowerPoint, which they've been doing in order to submit really fantastic pieces of work during lockdown. So you know, I could probably talk all day about the creativity, but I think the idea of, again, colleagues sharing with each other and sort of saying, well, this worked really well for me, give it a go, and actually recognising the students for their work as well. So we had, obviously we had Staff of the Week where, you know, students' work was recognised on Twitter, they were getting emails from the head teacher, and obviously they get a little pack when they come back to school for their Staff of the Week award, which is a lovely little sort of bag of goodies with stationery and all the things that all girls really love in there. But I think there's an enormous amount of creativity that's gone on in every single school in the country, and I'm sure that everybody's got their different versions of that, but I think for us it's definitely around the technology for learning side.
Brilliant, thank you, Nick. And another example that comes to mind for me is Rahila, who was the head of science at Chorley Girls, how she used Google Forms to create escape rooms and the use of QR codes to create learning that suits students' individual needs. So yes, definitely a lot of brilliant ideas. And Nick, you've touched on this quite a lot, actually, this idea of how the teaching community is really, really good at collaboration. And I think this past year has really highlighted that. So Sumaya, coming to you again, we've spoken about how this past year has really highlighted how brilliant the teaching community is in regards to collaborative work. What's been another quality that has stood out for you, or you've really seen the value of this past year?
I think from a department perspective, I think it's about sharing that workload. I think also what we had to look at and assess was well-being. I know that's a very, very hot topic right now for students as well as staff, particularly when we've returned back to full-time teaching and students' full-time education. So I think one of the most endearing parts of this whole process was that everyone was ensuring that they were looking after each other. One of the examples I wanted to use was when we did move to remote learning, I set up, part of my role as head of Key Stage 3, I set up a process where we had put together a bespoke remote curriculum map. And obviously we had to adapt that because there's a lot of things that were out of our control. So we wanted to ensure that the best possible topics were taught remotely was going to be effective. So through that adaptation, what we ensured was that every teacher had a week where they were responsible for creating resources and then putting it into our hub. And then as we went on through the carousel, by the end of the 6 weeks or the 5 weeks, every teacher was able to put one piece of lesson together that every other teacher adapted. So I think from that perspective, things were really, really managed well. And I think from a leader, a middle leader, I think it's very important to have analysed that, well, actually, even though we're working remotely and even though students are working remotely, for teachers, we had to consider, well, actually, what kind of conditions are they working in? Are they still homeschooling? Have they had a bereavement that they're still grieving over, and rightly so? Is it that there is a situation that they have had COVID and they're still recovering? And those who have had COVID, I think one of the most consistent things people have said is that it takes a lot of time to recover even after you've had it. So I think from that perspective, we were able to really get a true picture of what was happening at department level and then at whole school level, and how we're going to support you going forward. So I think from my perspective and receiving feedback from many other people, it was a very interesting journey. I think everyone really pulled together and had really some nice initiatives put together for staff and students. I think one of the things that we did at Chorley Boys, where we had a Friday no screen day. So members of the SLT managed the online learning, the remote learning side of things, and set tasks, and staff were able to take a breather that day, and students were also able to take a certain amount of breather where they were able to catch up with work that they hadn't completed, because obviously the pace in which that was going to happen was always going to be very different. So I think wellbeing is a very interesting and very hot topic right now, where I think leaders and schools and the trust have managed incredibly well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sumaya. Just coming back to you, Carl, we've spoken about a lot of change that has taken place this past year and how everyone who works in education had to just very rapidly adapt to that. I'm sure there's been a lot of positive changes, some of which we've spoken about already. Looking ahead, tell us about one change or a few changes that have been implemented this past year that you see yourself at Shilton Academy or educators around the country using moving forward?
I think one of the things which has happened, and Nick was talking about it earlier, is the investment into staff CPD using technology. And I think that's one of the things that's kind of here to stay, really, in terms of our use of technology to help with blended learning. And we've also seen across the country the rise of blended learning, and schools are using lots of models to do combined face-to-face delivery with information documentation on Google Classrooms. So I think one of the things which is here to stay is definitely the investment in staff CPD around the use of technology to enhance the work. Now, technology is not there to kind of replace the teacher or replace the sort of traditional way of teaching, but it's just around CPD to obviously enhance it. Now, another one would be the use of video conferencing. Teachers and sort of the education system has got very good at some of those keywords like Zoom and Google Meet and Google Hangout. And that's been a very, very good way of having key speakers come in and still talk to the children, to record videos, and then the children watch them later. We've had a number at Children Academy, we've had a number of people send in videos to inspire our young children. One that we had recently from a Alexandra Wilson, who is obviously a top lawyer, and she sent in a video to our pupils that was to inspire them about taking a career into law. And she's a fantastic lawyer, and the children were given tips and ways in which to do that. Now, had the sort of video conferencing not been as prevalent as it has recently, being around, that may not have been an opportunity we could obviously use, but that's been a fantastic opportunity. Children can still meet with key speakers and still gain key information about their educational journey.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, Carl. Sumaya, we've been talking a lot about how collaborative everyone in the teaching community is and the importance of monitoring well-being of ourselves and our colleagues. So Sumaya, can you just tell us about how inspiring your colleagues have been to everyone?
That's a really interesting question, actually, because I think there's a lot of attention around how to reconnect back into the teaching world, how we're going to reconnect the students. But actually, one of the things that are not really highlighted is how inspiring your team members are. And actually, it's one of those things where it's a shared experience. Everyone has experienced the same effects, but in very different contexts. So I think we can all relate on that level. And I think everyone has been very considerate of one another, which has been incredibly endearing to see. And just watching them persevere has been inspiring. Just to give you some context behind some people's difficulties, I think they've lost a family member in a space of 2 weeks, and then they've lost another family member, but they've continued to come to work. They've continued to invest in the growth of the community, of our students, our learners, and they're very much committed. And I think seeing that at that level has been completely and utterly overwhelming and inspiring. And I think that's something that keeps me going as well, watching their strength. So it's almost like taking other people's strength and using it as my own. And I think vice versa. I think we have strengths where we've been able to manage things in a very different way to others. And I think that's been quite pivotal. It's helped the unity, it's helped keep everyone together, it's helped the progress. And I think fundamentally it is about our learners, our students, and making sure that we're putting our best foot forward to almost rehabilitate them back into education. I commend every single member of the educational institution for continuing to persevere.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sumaya. Nick, if I just finish up with you, I don't need to mention again how there's been a lot of change this past year. I think we're all kind of sick of the word change, but I guess the beauty of change is it's a real chance for self-reflection and growth. So Nick, what have you learned about yourself this past year?
I think there's lots that we've all learned about ourselves, and probably things that you never really thought about before. So I think for me, on a personal level, what I've learned is to actually find some time for me, and it's something that I've not been very good at ever in my whole teaching career, because I'm quite dedicated and passionate about what I'm doing, and I want to get things done. But what I found during the sort of pandemic and being at home and trying to work from home sometimes and being in school sometimes is the importance of my own well-being. And I think that's always and it is more prevalent more recently, but I think for me, like, I needed to make sure that every single day I found that sort of 30-40 minutes to just find some time to do something that I really enjoy doing. So I think, like, what I'd say to anybody out there who is listening, if you're one of these people that were like me before, please make sure you go and find time to do something for yourself, to actually just switch off from work mode, because I think we're all really guilty of it as teachers. that we just keep going and keep going and keep going. So I think I'd have to say what I learned was the importance of some me time and some time to just switch off, because there was a lot of screen time. You know, we were on computers from 8 till 6 and beyond most days. You know, working with the students on Google Classrooms, planning lessons, responding to all the 50 million emails that come in. So I think, you know, hugely advise people that if you're one of these people that is a real solid grafter and you're constantly working, the best thing I did and the best thing I've learned about me is to find some time for myself.
Absolutely, really, really brilliant advice there, Nick, for yourself and everyone out there who is a bit too much of a workaholic. Brilliant. Listeners, we are heading off to a break now of this episode where we are speaking with school leaders to reflect on this past year. I just want to say a huge thank you to Nick, Samaya and Carl for joining us and sharing your reflections of this past year in school. You've all been absolutely brilliant. Do stay tuned for after the break, where we are going to be joined by Amar, who is just going to continue on with this conversation. Thank you to everyone for joining us.
Listeners, welcome back to the second part of the Future Show here on Inspire FM. Before the break, you were hearing from Jawairiya Tanveer, my co-presenter, who was speaking to 3 school leaders about the past 12 months. She heard from Carl Bell, Assistant Head Teacher at Chiltern Academy, Nick Ponsonby, Assistant Head Teacher at Cholney High School for Girls, and Samaya Mohammed, Head of Key Stage 3 at Cholney High School for Boys. All 3 gave us some wonderful reflections on what they have seen from their students and their fellow teachers following what's been a year of uncertainty. Moving into the second half of the show, we now get a chance to hear from 3 senior leaders. We are fortunate to be joined by Mumin Humayun, Head of School at Stockwood Park Academy. Also joining us will be Rhoda Flindle, Head Teacher of Ashcroft High School, both of whom are making their debuts on Inspire FM. And lastly, we will be joined by Head Teacher of one of the local primary schools, Catherine Level of Dallow Primary. Now, if I can put my first question to you, Catherine, what's been your reflection upon what's been, I suppose, the most incredible of years for us all, full of uncertainty, challenges, and ultimately, I suppose that element of satisfaction. What's it like having the children back, first of all?
Hello, Amar. Well, I have to say it's absolutely fantastic having the children back. It's so nice to be back in school, to have a relatively normal routine, or one that has become normal before lockdown, and to see the children in school. We know that school is actually the best place for the children. They are happy to be here. Our Dallow children are just so positive and so happy and love being part of the Dallow family and community. And they love their learning. They're so enthusiastic, and it's just great. You know, you hear them in the corridors, you hear singing as you walk around the school, and I walk around the school every morning after I've done the front gate, and I pop in and say hello to them, and they're all so delighted to see me. They love being with their teachers and their friends, and so it's a really sort of positive thing to have them back. And for some children, I think the sense of normality and, you know, school being a safe place, and there's routine, and that they like that, they welcome it, and that they want to get back to that. So it's been a really positive thing having the children back in school.
Brilliant, thank you, Catherine. Same question for Rhoda. That sense of normality is something we hear a lot, but for your students and for every, I suppose, secondary school student out there, that's even more important, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, thank you very much for having me here today. So that sense of normality, it's a strange word, really, normality. I think we've kind of lost the idea of what normality is, but it's been incredible to see how these children have adapted to all of these different situations. But having them back and seeing them adapt to being back in the classroom environment, adapt to bubbles, adapt to kind of being in different playground situations, has been just phenomenal. They've just adapted so well to what we now perceive as being normal, and it's just been incredible. Having our children back in school, these young people, so enthusiastic to be back in the classroom, in that learning environment, and having gone through so much change is just a wonderful thing to do and to have and to see every day. And also the teachers have adapted so much to this new normal, and again that word normal and what we've normalized. We've had just some incredible feedback from parents and from bus drivers and the children, and this new normal for them, and I keep going back to that word normal that you used, Amar, has just been phenomenal. It's just fantastic. So yeah, a great question. Thank you.
Mumin, your reflections upon I suppose having your students back, and what the past week's been like for yourselves.
Yeah, no, thank you, Amar. Thank you for having me on. I did want to also just congratulate you on making the list of inspirational Muslims on the Emerald 100 list. So congratulations.
Oh, blimey! Thank you very much, Mumin.
I'm going to recall a story from last week. So I was in my office and I had a knock on the door saying there was a year 7 student who had a meeting with me. And I thought, I haven't really planned. I haven't got a meeting in my diary. And I said, who is it? I'll let him, I'll quickly see him. So this boy who I do teach came to see me, and he said, look, sir, I need to see you. And so, what's the matter? He goes, well, sir, my laptop isn't working, and you said to me that if I needed any help, that was to contact you. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'll get your laptop sorted. And then he said, thank you very much, sir. And so one more thing. It's really good to be back in school. And he smiled and he left.
That's brilliant.
And that's what the week has been like. There was lots of kind of noise and chatter about how students would cope, how staff would cope. And I'm not underselling the challenges that we've all faced. But as Rhoda said, as Catherine said, having students back in school, the sounds, the sound of learning in the classroom, the sounds of laughter in the playground, really happy to be back, and really a credit to the students, parents and staff for how smoothly things have gone since the return of students.
I suppose, no, thank you, Mumin. I suppose we shouldn't really, the challenges are still there, I suppose, Mumin, aren't they? Just because the children are back all over the country, going back to the second week back for many, the challenges are still there. Describe what those challenges like. So what's it like being in school at the moment? How much of the day is taken up, for example, with testing and making sure that all the various regulations are adhered to?
So yeah, Amar, it has been very difficult to do the testing. What we've arranged at Stockwood Park is all our testing is done on Mondays, and from Tuesday through to Friday, students are back in normal lessons, but we wanted as little disruption to the day. So there's the challenges of testing, but also just acknowledging that there is, all our students and staff have been through an awful lot, in terms of the wellbeing agenda. We can't ignore the fact that there are lots of unspoken fears and concerns that staff and students might have, but it's our job to help everyone through the process. And just to talk about those challenges, young people and schools in general have always faced challenges. And when we talk about going back to the new normal, I'm not sure if things are ever normal, but we continue to do our best to help support to get the best out of our students. So there are challenges, but I think we have lots of support mechanisms in place to help, prepare for what is going to come. And no doubt over the coming weeks and coming months, we'll see the challenges show themselves. But I think, again, our students are resilient, our staff are committed. I'm confident.
Rhoda, your thoughts on what Mum has just said there about, the challenges still are there?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to echo what Mumin has just said. So again, the testing, staff rise to the challenge, and students and parents also. We have been testing since January, so we've had that system in place. But I think whilst the testing is essential and we've put those processes and systems in place, the learning, we have to focus on the learning and the well-being of our students and our staff. And I absolutely echo what Moomin has said there. But the students seem to have come back and just kind of gone with it. And I think I have to say that the resilience of the staff, just almost leaping in and rising to those challenges has been phenomenal. And you know, some of the concerns that were faced, and I'm sure that Catherine and Moomin will probably join me in saying these things, that you know, we have to send consent forms out, and we have to see that our parents will take that leap of faith with us as well. And they did, you know, parents did take that leap of faith, and those consent forms were filled in, and the students were in those testing centres and straight back to their lessons, and are in their lessons, and they just can't wait to be in those lessons and learning. And this, you know, we are facing challenges every day, because of course we have to make sure those controls are in place and our risk assessments are in place. But of course the primary concern is the well-being of our children and our staff and the engagement in lessons. So every day is a challenge, but we face that challenge every day and we get through every day.
Catherine, being the head of a large primary school in the town, Dallow Primary, what describe for us what it's like in terms of the children aren't tested. Is that correct? It's different. It's high school students that are tested. But what's different in the way that you know, a typical primary school has opened up? What are the regulations for yourselves?
Yes, you're absolutely right. It is only the adults in the school that are testing, not the children, which has made it easier for me as the school leader, because I can't imagine the organisation that goes into all the testing, and I take my hats off to all the secondary school head teachers and staff, everyone that's put that in place. So in some ways, our day-to-day looks still like it did before Christmas, before lockdown, which we had adapted and was different to our full curriculum, but in some ways not so different. I mean, in secondary school as well, the students tend to move between classes to go for different subjects, and they move around every hour, whereas we are in our classrooms, and generally the children are in their classrooms for the day. They don't move around to different teachers or to different rooms, obviously for things like PE or music or something like that, but generally they do stay where they are. So all through this whole thing, I think in some ways the changes have been slightly less in primary school. For us in particular, one of the things that had most impact is not being able to have our singing assemblies. We work really closely with Luton Music Service, and singing and music is a huge part of Dallow. It really is. And we had these amazing singing assemblies, and we do it, you know, with the key stages, key stage 1 and key stage 2. And it was something, before I came to the school, I just thought, oh yeah, singing assemblies, all schools have a singing assembly, well, that's lovely. And then I went into them, and it is so completely uplifting, and the whole school joins in, and we can't do that at the moment because we can't all get together in a smallish space with lots of people. So that's one of the things. But we have adapted really well, you know, thinking about our PE lessons, having them outside as much, as I'm sure it's exactly the same in the secondary school. So when you're talking about differences and difficulties, yes, it is about adapting the curriculum, but as the others have both said, you know, the children and the staff have all been fantastic. They're hugely resilient, and they've just adapted and got on with it and made the best of it. You know, this is what we have to do. We have to provide our children with the best possible education we can. There are limits, you know, because of the pandemic, but we will work within that, and we will provide the best curriculum that we can. And actually, our curriculum is really as full as it ever was. Some parts of it, as I say, like music, have been reduced slightly, but where they are still getting music provision. We haven't cut anything out. So we're doing our best to give the full experience, the full learning experience to all our children.
Listeners, you're listening to the Future Show here on Inspire FM. We've got 3 senior leaders from two high schools in the town. We've got Moomin Humayun, head of school at Stockwood Park Academy. We've also got Rhoda Flindle, head teacher of Ashcroft High School. And just a few moments ago, you heard the voice of Catherine Lovell, head teacher of Dallow Primary School as well. Rhoda, very briefly, what sorts of things aren't you able to do at the moment?
So similarly to Catherine, we are unable to have some of the wonderful music lessons that the children absolutely adore. So the Luton Music Service is actually based at Ashcroft High School. So they operate out of Ashcroft High School, and we're unable to operate some of those wonderful music lessons and peripatetic lessons, which we're hoping to start again very soon, hopefully after Easter. Fingers crossed. Some of the indoor PE lessons that the children love. Again, we're looking at risk assessments now. Some of those really great things. Assemblies, assemblies where the children gather together, but we're operating virtual assemblies at the moment. So things like that. We're operating a bubble system where the children don't move around the school. So they're kind of based in one classroom apart from the Key Stage 4 option lessons. So we're trying to keep those controls in place at the moment to minimise the spread of infection. So those things are the things that we're unable to operate at the moment. But in the same way, we're still delivering the whole school curriculum. And again, the subjects and the teachers have been so adaptable, and they are delivering the subjects in the same way. It's just phenomenal to watch.
Mumin, tell us a little bit more about, we were speaking off air, and what came across was that feeling of real pride in staff, and it comes across from all three of you when you're speaking. But Mumin, if I can go to you first, describe your staff, the senior leaders around you, your class teachers. Everyone's been mucking in, I suppose, haven't they?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still relatively new to all things Luton. I joined Stockwood in January last year, so 3 months into my role, lockdown and the world kind of stopped spinning for a while. I've been bowled over by the staff body here, both kind of the work they do in school, but also the work they do outside school. For example, every 2 weeks we distribute food to the local community via Go Dharmic, which is a local charity, but that's probably got 15, 16 members of staff who give up their Saturdays to help support locals within school, teachers going above and beyond to support young people. So really bowled over, and the leadership team have been phenomenal. I think you realise the strength and depth, and that saying, it takes a village. It really does. The work that we do to support young people is not the job of any one person, but as a team of committed adults, that's what makes a difference.
Same question for yourself, Rhoda. You beat Mumin. Mumin's been in his post for 14 months. You're very new, aren't you?
I absolutely am. So I actually began in post in September. So it was a little bit of a baptism by fire, joining a school during a global pandemic. But again, I absolutely echo what Mumin has just said. It really does take a village. The staff have been phenomenal. We are also doing some wonderful things for the children, and I am blown away by Luton and the things that go on here. We have just started the Luton, so the Juventus Football Training Academy for the students, but haven't been able to operate it fully. So they're doing something very similar to the wonderful Joe Wicks PE videos that went on over lockdown. So it's posted on our website to go out to all children so they can train with Juventus at home, in an attempt to do something for the children who were at home during the lockdown. But the senior leaders and the staff delivering live lessons across so the children could have their normal timetable whilst at home for all 5 year groups. We don't have a sixth form, but it's just phenomenal to join a school in September and to see the transition over the last 7-8 months has just been phenomenal. I could not be prouder of the staff and children, and also feel more integrated to Luton, having come from Brent and having been there for 22 years. I feel very at home here.
Thank you, Rhoda. Very briefly, Catherine, we are coming to the end of the show in a few minutes, so I just want to, there's a few other questions I did want to ask, but very briefly, your reflections upon the staff you've got around you, and that word resilience keeps coming up.
Yes, I mean, I echo Rhoda and Moomin. My staff are fantastic. My senior team have really pulled together and worked with me to lead the school. All the sort of teaching staff, whether teachers or TAs, their learning curve has been so steep using technology, particularly the TAs using Loom videos and things like that, to make sure that our children have an outstanding provision. And they really have, I've been blown away by the quality of work that the children have had access to. And also our family workers, they've been amazing, doing things like food parcels as well, and just keeping in touch with the community and safeguarding work. And the admin and sort of non-teaching support staff in school, keeping the school running on a daily basis, checking that it's ticking over, that the children in school are safe and the environment is safe for them. Absolutely everybody has played their part and, you know, done a really, really good job. So yes, very proud of them all.
Thank you, Catherine. I just want to ask quite an important question, and for those parents that are listening in, I think this is a really, really valid question. But what are schools doing to make up for that sort of shortfall in learning, and also those enrichment opportunities that the young people have missed out on? So if you can very briefly, Moomin, we'll start with you. Just tell us a little bit about how you're trying, how the school is trying to make up for what's been, a couple of months now where the children have just been away from learning and away from their friends.
So yeah, they've been away, and what we've done during the remote learning is to get an audit of how the engagement levels of students, kind of assessing the work they produce. So we're trying to benchmark where they are. So on their return, what we're doing at the moment is doing some a range of assessments to find out where students are at, and that will allow heads of departments and teachers to build a curriculum that's going to help bridge the gap. On top of that, it's difficult at the moment because we're not able to offer the range of extracurricular activities that we would normally because of lockdown and COVID restrictions. But we have started with, I run a book reading club every Thursday with a group of Year 7 students. And so we've got some clubs that will be starting up, but it is a challenge at the moment. But also I think it's just important for students to feel comfortable being back in a school environment, and the focus is on quality first teaching, so they're back in lessons, learning, enjoying, being kind of supported, but also being challenged to achieve. So I think our focus very much is on delivering the best quality lessons, and in the meantime we'll get an assessment and an idea of where they are, so we can start filling in some of those gaps.
Brilliant, thank you. Rhoda, same question for yourself. We'll have to keep it brief though, we're coming to the end.
Sure, absolutely. So I'll very quickly go through. So during lockdown, I said we had live lessons. So our remote learning, we had over 90% engagement by all year groups. So we ran 3 weekly assessments. So we've got a good idea of where our students are. So as a result of that, we've redesigned our curriculum and our school week. And also implemented a wellbeing curriculum, so we're hitting everything there. We're putting in place a summer school, which also involves wellbeing, and an enrichment curriculum. So that will take place after school every single day. It will involve art, STEM, and literacy, which also includes a drop everything and read daily in every single subject.
Catherine, just very briefly, some of the things that Dallow Primary are providing pupils.
Very, very similar to both of them. There's a real focus on well-being, certainly in these few weeks before the Easter holidays, because I'm sure, like the other two schools, many of our children have really been affected by loss due to COVID, and many family members have been affected. So we're working on that emotional well-being as well, whilst assessing, using assessment for learning to identify gaps. But we have noticed the children that engaged well with remote learning, actually there are much fewer gaps. But we are looking at running a summer school as well, with focus on core subjects, but also team building and emotional strength and emotional skills. That will be in the summer. We're looking at, well, we're going to implement a full-time intervention program to target those children that are just not where they should be, so we can get them caught up, and clubs and things, just to get children back into socialising. One thing we found with very little children in reception, they weren't talking and they weren't playing with other children because they're so used to being on their own and not working alongside groups of children, that we can see that down in reception. So we need to work on those skills too.
Brilliant, thank you. Listeners, you've been listening to the Future Show here on Inspire FM. We've had some immense guests here. Guys, thank you very much. Mumin Humayun, Head of School, Stockwood Park Academy. Catherine Level, Head Teacher, Dello Primary, and Rhoda Flindle, Head Teacher, Ashcroft High School. In one sentence, I just want to put you all on the spot. Mumin, what have you learned about yourself? Just one sentence over this past year.
What have I learned about myself? I think for me, I'm just very grateful for the amazing team that I work with on a daily basis.
Brilliant, thank you. Rhoda, sorry to put you on the spot like this. One sentence. What have you learned about yourself?
Anything is possible with teamwork.
Brilliant, thank you. Catherine, last point from you.
I think this is for all head teachers really, but how important schools are, and they really are the heart of the community and hold the community together.
Brilliant. That's been Mumin Humayun, Catherine Level, Rhoda Flindle, from senior leaders from schools in the town. Guys, thank you for your time. It's been a real joy having you on, and thank you from all our listeners for everything you're doing for young people in the town. Thank you.